is what's really, really important is, again, like identifying these are the delta changes. Here's the groups who need to get changed. These are the trainings that they need to take by when. Here's how we're going to measure success. And then like, here's the rollout plan for that training. And then it's iterative, right? I think people also really get hung up in thinking like training is a checkbox. It's not, right? It's not. Like, you never want to say I'm like training to time, meaning this is an old sort of army adage. It's either you're training to time, which is, hey, you needed 8 hours of training, or you're training to standard, which is me like, could you do the job? And the latter is the one that matters. Who cares if you sat in the room for 8 hours a day and learned nothing? Like, congratulations, you wasted your time, the instructor's time, and the org's time. Like, so let's get you to a place where you can take those trainings on your own time, taking the right trainings at the right price for the right thing that you're doing. And then it leads to a real business outcome, which hopefully is less tickets submitted, faster business processes.
Thank you so much for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for Companies Running SAP. Today we've got Colin Ridlon, and if you want to talk about training, Colin's your man, because, I mean, he started out, this is crazy, as a musician. He won't tell us what he did, but maybe Google could help you there. He was a linguist in the Army, so obviously if somebody can speak multiple languages, they can help overcome gaps and overcome things like that. Went through school into strategy consulting and is now leading Micromanagement, which is a company that helps with SAP training. So Micromanagement has a whole set of capabilities to go help people get more out of SAP by understanding what it is, what it does. Colin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, John, it's a real pleasure being here. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. I'm a big fan. A big fan of you and what you guys do at Converge and IS. Just happy to be here. It's just great to be on the show.
Thanks. So when we think about why people talk about training, people talk about how training is important, and on all of these Gantt charts for all of these programs, there's change management across the bottom. And you ask 7 people what that means, they're like, I don't know, tell people something's changed and tell them what they need to do differently and why.
Really? Yeah.
But there's something underneath this that's really important. Can you share, like, in your experience, what do the best of the best do with their team when they are about to start an SAP project?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thanks for calling out change management. I think it's gotten a little bit buzzy in the industry lately, right? People just throw it around, but it's just what you said. It's like a line item on a RACI chart. Nobody really knows what goes into change management, right? So, at MMC, we take the approach that it starts with training, right? Change management has to do with training. It has to do with these mindset shifts. Then we start to get into adoption. And then after that, from adoption becomes those better business outcomes where we're seeing higher revenue, more data-driven decisions, and then cost efficiencies, right? So I think when the best of the best are approaching a new project or, what else is front and center, the big S4 migration, right? Everyone's gone from ECC to S4 with the end of service states. The big thing is I think they start off and they ask themselves, like, why, right? What are we doing this for? Like, don't just run towards something because it says AI or it's shiny and new. You have to really think about it from like a people, process, and technology standpoint. So that change management starts at the very beginning before you've even sat down and thought about things like license utilization or, configuration or architecture or regional deployments. And it really comes around this idea of how do we get the organization, right, to come along with us on this journey that's not going to be overnight. It's not really going to take 3 months or maybe 6 months, maybe even a year, 5 years, depending on the size of the organization. And they really identify, okay, where are people at today? And they design these change management programs and these training programs to meet people where they are and then take them to where they want to be. Right. And I think that is so vital for driving that ROI that is the big, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
I completely agree. This idea that people need to be at the center of it all, there needs to be that purpose, needs to be that why. I think the dumbest thing I see teams doing is they'll take the procurement group or the supply chain group or the accounts payable group, and then they'll stick them on this project and they'll be like, hey, listen, this person from a systems integrator is going to ask for your requirements. And these poor folks are like, well, I don't know, I need it to do what it does today. And they're missing this ingredient of what can it do? What are the other things that this system could, should, would be doing that we didn't even know it does. And it's hard to ask for something as a business person if you didn't even know that was the art of the possible. So how do you see organizations taking folks that are, like the subject matter or project representative or business lead or something like that from a procurement group on these projects, or from an accounts payable group, and helping them get up to speed so that they are a meaningful contributor, not just a consumer, towards an outcome, towards a purpose of get more out of this thing?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Sean. The craziest thing ever is to say we're implementing a new technology that does the same thing that the last technology did, right? That just seems backwards, right? So I think, again, it all starts with this
I need
idea.
a faster way, Colin, to do what I did yesterday. I want yesterday's report faster.
Yeah. Well, then now that's not the worst thing, right? If yesterday's report does come out faster, maybe you can spend a little bit more time doing something new. But so often, I think that that's the mindset shift that needs to happen is like, hey, this is the way we did it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the right way or the best way or the most modern or based on best practices, right? So I think when you're starting off with one of these project leads or, your quote super user or, the head of the business department or SAP delivery, right? They really need to be spun up on, well, what are the delta changes from the system I'm going from to where I'm going, right? Like what is actually different? What is possible? What are the additional insights, pieces of business intelligence that I can pull out of the new system once we get it up to speed, right? Then they need to identify what are the most important pieces that my team needs to understand. And once they've got those identified, they say, okay, now I'm ready to sort of set up this training and training program, which is going to lead to adoption, which is going to lead to business outcomes. I know that my people in procurement are going to need to be experts on module X, on process X, Y, and Z. That's sort of standard. Then on our sort of custom processes, the way that I believe it's going to go, now that I've identified the improvements that are possible, what's the training that these people need in order to make that happen? And then finally, okay, how do I measure the results of that training or change management program that I'm planning to roll out so that I can make sure that people are getting the right training that they need at the right time and it's not affecting their normal day-to-day business operations?
Yeah, it's that time that's invested. And I really believe it as an investment. If you don't understand what you're doing and what the system could be doing, then you don't belong on that project. And you need to put your hand up and say, I don't have what I need to be successful. Because otherwise, you're going to ask for what you had yesterday and not what you should have tomorrow. And that is so critical. And you cannot abdicate this. I think this is one of the most frequent things that I see is, oh, we hired a company to do that for us. Great. They met you 2 months ago. And they know this much about your life and your business. So it's very difficult to abdicate that and still have the success that people are looking at.
Yeah.
I think about adoption being so critical and how understanding the context of what is happening and how, yes, there is a easier user experience. And yet there are companies that have implemented and upgraded and they're still doing all of their purchasing manually. They're not actually using the MRP engine for anything. And it's shocking to me, right?
Yep.
Because it means that you're doing what the system you bought and paid for and implemented is supposed to be doing for you.
Correct.
So how do some of the leaders in these organizations need to make sure that they're thinking about the training? And then what can you suggest for them when they're kind of needing to defend a bit of an investment earlier on in the project to help make sure that they get what they need to be successful?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to note that, and this is a study that comes from McKinsey, is 87% of executives cite like a skills gap as a critical challenge for their organization, right? And when you're moving technologies, if you didn't have a skills gap before, you just created one, right? Because now nobody knows how to use the new technology, right? And this is one of the reasons why over 58% of HR leaders have, identified upskilling as a top priority and have increased their training and development budgets. And part of it is to address that skills gap. Part of it is that training and professional development for employees makes employee retention skyrocket, right? Which is its own sort of cost lever, right? It is its own efficiency lever. But
what happens if we invest in them and they leave? What happens if we don't and they stay?
Right. Yeah, but that's the way that, you're going to be able to get the maximum sort of bang for your buck out of this new technology is making sure you're addressing that skill gap up front. So again, having, a group of people, if it's one project lead or if it's, the heads of the business department who have identified those processes and know, okay, these are the things that my people need to train on, right? where can I go out and find like that training program? I mean, it's partnering with somebody like Michael Management or, or somewhere else. Like, we'd love to have you, but we want to make sure you get trained and get the most out of your buck, right? And then putting together like those targeted learning paths, right? With a micro learning sort of focus, giving people the ability to do something experientially where they can get their hands dirty. This is critical for adult learners. Having taught Arabic to adult learners, I can tell you, we spent 8 hours a day in the classroom, and our training was always never more than 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off, right? And then it was never more than 20 minutes of lecture and 25 minutes of doing, right? And so I think that's a piece that really gets missed as well, as folks think, oh, okay, great. Well, the system integrators included training in their SOW. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take 300 people or 200 people. I'm going to put them in a room for 8 hours a day, for 40 hours a week, and then they're going to be fine. That's not really the case either, right? Because then you've got everybody trying to sit there and absorb everything that's about, like, it's all the processes are changing and they have to figure it all out at once. Like, that's really, really difficult. And then people still have a day job, right? They still have a normal, regular sort of set of things that they have to do. They have responsibilities. And now you've taken them away from that. You stuck them in a room and you're like, I hope you remember everything. And then what happens when the consultants leave, right? Where do people go? Where do people go from there? So I think, that to me is what's really, really important is, again, like identifying these are the delta changes. Here's the groups who need to get changed. These are the trainings that they need to take by when. Here's how we're going to measure success. And then like, here's the rollout plan for that training. And then it's iterative, right? I think people also really get hung up in thinking like training is a checkbox. It's not, right? You never want to say I'm like training to time. Meaning this is an old sort of army adage. It's either you're training to time, which is, hey, you needed 8 hours of training, or you're training to standard, which is mean like, could you do the job? The latter is the one that matters. Who cares if you sat in a room for 8 hours a day and learned nothing? Like, congratulations, you wasted your time, the instructor's time, and your org's time. Like, so let's get you to a place where you can take those trainings on your own time, taking the right trainings at the right price for the right thing that you're doing. And then it leads to a real business outcome, which hopefully is less tickets submitted, faster business processes, like more efficiencies, better reporting. I think there's a billion different ways you can spend it as like a project lead saying, here's the real ROI, but also be realistic, right? I mean, I think a lot of people come in pie in the sky and they say, oh, we're going to get, a 50%, faster sort of cash conversion cycle or something crazy like that. Like, don't do that to yourself. Like, give yourself a range and say, hey, we're targeting like a 5 to a 15%, in the beginning. And then we're expecting some bumps, but like, this is the plan on how we're going to measure it. This is the plan on how we're going to see improvement. And this is what we're going to do to iterate if we're not seeing those improvements. And I think that gives people a lot of confidence when you say, as a business leader, I have this plan for my people to get to where they need to go.
And it's not just the technology that's automatically going to do it for us. People need to adopt it, understand it, make it happen. And I think that brings back an example of the feeling that people have that's utterly paralyzing when they don't get what they need to be successful. And in some organizations, they're too damn scared to ask for what they need to be successful because they might be fired if they did. And I hope you're not working at one of those. If you are, time to polish up the resume. But if you see after a go live, a group of people standing around a computer and it's anxiety on all of their faces, like, I'm scared I'm going to break it or I'm going to do it wrong. And if they're scared they're going to break it, it's because they don't understand it. And it might be the process and they might not want to push the right button or push the wrong button. But they won't push the right one either because they don't want to break it.
Right. And, unfortunately, we've seen that. We've seen that. We had a customer come in and they came in on a Monday. The go live was on a Sunday. And we're on the phone with them on Monday afternoon. And so we're like, hey, what's going on? They say, well, so we got S/4HANA. We're like, well, congratulations. That's great. Like, how's it going? And it was just what you said. It was a paralyzing anxiety where you had a dozen people who knew what they were doing at ECC, had no clue what they were doing in S4. And they were like, we don't even want to enter a T code. Like, we're just terrified. Like, what do we do? Can you help us? And again, that's the wrong way, right? Like, you shouldn't just roll something out brand new to somebody overnight and expect them to be able to make up the skills gap that effectively the organization just created, right? Give people the tools that they need so that when they know, not only do they know when the go live happens, but they're ready to like act in the production mode of the new system. Like they are prepared, they know when it's coming, and they know what needs to be done in order to start to gain those efficiencies. And like, after production, you go right into hypercare. And if you have somebody who's terrified to press the next button, on a screen, they're never going to know if the process works or not, because then hypercare is just dwindling away. So you have to be able to tell people it's just a communication thing, right? It's communication, it's training, and all of those things are going to lead to adoption.
You used to do it this way. Now you do it this way. Here's what good looks like. Here's the outcome we're going for. Here's how you know you succeeded. And that kind of formula is so, so important. I think about the other context, the other risk around this is that you end up with a condition where you've implemented something and the people that implemented it have left. Now you run into a situation that you didn't plan for. And there's a large utility that had this issue with, I'll just call it credit and debits on the vendor statements. And they sometimes actually went back and asked a vendor to please write us a check so we can cash the check so that we can go and process this and then apply this to your account. And then, by the way, if we need to reconcile something, we'll cut you a check to go and, because they didn't understand that you can apply a credit or a debit memo onto that vendor account and not actually have to exchange any checks.
Oh my gosh.
It was one of the most horrifically impractical and ineffective workarounds that have been in place for years, because nobody on the ground knew that this other basic capability existed. I mean, nobody tried to Google it either, I guess, but that's probably a symptom of another skills gap. But this capability that's there inherent in the system, they were avoiding it through ignorance and this is the way I guess we have to do it. And they didn't even know to ask for a better way to do it. They just thought the system was that hard to use.
Well, I mean, kudos to the team for being solution oriented, right? Like they came up with something. They came up with a process, even though it was not a great one. Yeah, not a great one, right? But I mean, I think this is one of the things that, we see often too, is when it's a question of who gets the training, right? And so if you trained a dozen IT super users, or like one system architect and like a particular BU, business unit, right? And then the onus is now on them to do like this train the trainer thing. And then you have thousands of people out in the field who are running the process. You've got one or two people who are expected to train all of them. The system fails, right? It's not a viable mechanism. And so, this is one of the reasons why, at MMC, we love the narrative that, SAP pushes that, S/4HANA is not an IT initiative, it's a business initiative, right? But we want to take that one step further and say S/4HANA is a people initiative, because the people are who's running the technology, and that's not your 12 super users. And you can't put the onus on those, like that half dozen, IT super users in a 200,000 person org to train everybody else on how to use it. There's just not enough of their time to go around. And really, are they trainers? Do they have like the knowledge to be able to kind of put it into the level to meet where an end user is? Or are they going to be like so deep in the weeds and talking about, baddies and like switches and, RFCs and everything else that, you're going to lose your audience anyway. So again, like having, a training partner, like Michael Management, I think one of our best strengths is that our training is the whole gamut, right? From folks who have never touched SAP before, all the way up into the super users and people who are doing configurations. And I think having a training partner who can bring those resources to bear is super, super important when you're trying to get maximum ROI out of this investment.
Yeah, there's train the trainer with hope that works strategy, but I have never seen hope as a strategy play out with any kind of consistency or reliability. So yeah, Colin, this is fantastic. I really hope that more people can take from this that ask for what you need to be successful and make sure that the people that are actually going to use it get training, not only on the basics of how to do the 3 things on a happy path, but understand this is the context that you're doing those in. And here are some of the things that are going to go bump in the night. And here are some of the things that need to be fixed. And that overall concept, as an example, what is MRP? How does it work? How could that automatically generate purchase orders? I see people asking regularly, can SAP automatically generate purchase orders? Heck yeah, it can. You mean you're not already doing it? Let's go. That's a physician heal thyself kind of moment, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, the basic navigation pieces, that's like table stakes, right? That's bare minimum for people who are going to be using the system. Like they have to understand that the way the navigation has changed. Because again, if you're moving and you went from a GUI to to Fiori, you're going to be terrified when you like walk into your what used to be your bedroom and like now you've got bunk beds and you used to have a trundle. You're like, what is this? Like it's anxiety inducing. And then I think the other part is it's back on like the business leaders who have made the decision that we're going to do the migration, we're going to implement the new tech. They have to have the wherewithal and like be cognizant of like, my people don't have these skills. I have to address these skills in order to make this technology implementation work correctly. You can't forget the people. You have to, sometimes you do need to lead people to the water a little bit here, right? Or else you're going to be throwing them in the middle of the very deep ocean, and there is a lot of scary stuff out there, right? But there's a better way to do it, and it starts right at the beginning of saying, hey, first it's the why, then it's the who, the what, and the how. Right, like it's very, very easy. We all learned like that those components of a story or a news article when we were in elementary school, and yet the more educated we get, we forget the simple stuff. And you're like, no, get back to the basics. Like you can't expect everybody to come in and be like, oh, you know what? We've got S/4HANA. Great. I guess I'm going to go and get my own training. Like what?
Yeah,
Don't do that.
It's up to us as leaders to build the people, and those people build the business. And if we don't give them the tools, we don't get the results. So,
exactly right.
I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Colin. I hope everybody has a chance to go check out what Colin and MMC offer. I know we're going to link this up. And Colin, thanks again. I hope everybody takes this opportunity to go and think about what you need to be successful to build a stronger supply chain and procurement for companies running SAP. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next week.
Cheers, Sean. Thanks.